Okay. I think it's best if I just talk. I might insert some video or something in the background. But there's this topic that I've been meaning to talk about for quite some time, and I think the issue stems primarily from like just what really got me to talk is actually Hearthstone, but this has to do with fighting games actually, and it's Multiversus. And when Multiversus came out, there was a glaring issue with the game that I saw nobody talk about, and it's the reason I actually still haven't really played the game, and I'm basically boycotting the game. And it's an issue that sets up a precedent for future fighting games as well, and in many ways is like harmful and will hurt fighting games for a while to come. So, first of all, I'm not here to talk about whether like Multiverses is a good or bad game. Um, for all I care about, it could be one of the best games ever, like made. That's a whole different discussion here. And I'm also not here to talk about how they had a $100 pre-order that gave you early access to the game before a huge tournament that gave large cash payouts, uh, which is another issue that perhaps someone could talk about. I'm actually here to talk about paid currency and the free-to-play model in fighting games, and whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing, and spoiler why I take issue with it. So I think something to have in mind is that this is not a model often used for fighting games. Um, I mean, there's some things like Brawlhalla and games like Dead or Alive have like a free to play version, but historically, fighting games are paid games where you pay anywhere from like 15, 20 to $60, and you get a game with a roster. And it's common for some of these games to have DLC characters, and season passes have become more and more common recently, and some games even sell cosmetics. But once again, this is usually in the form of DLC. So where does where does Multiversus fall in? So for simplicity, I won't really talk about those bundles Multiversus has at the start of this discussion. We'll get into this later. But the main thing I'm here to talk about is that Multiversus is free. Anyone can pick up and play the game, and the real unlocking process is in with characters. So characters can be unlocked for gold, which people have done the math. If you play the game for 200 hours, you can indeed unlock all the current roster for free. And wins give more, the equivalent of gold, by the way. Like, I don't actually know what it's called. I do know their premium currency, though, is Gleamium, which is the alternative to unlocking characters and how you can unlock cosmetics in the game. And Gleamium effectively comes at 450 Gleamium for about $4, $4 to $5, depending on what region of the world you're in and how the currency exchange works for you. So yeah, let's talk about that. Um, Effectively, the price for each character, once again depending on your region, can be anywhere between 6.5 to $8. And I say dollars, so that might mean for someone else that's their equivalent currency, equivalent to $6.5 and so forth. And is that a bad thing for unlocking characters? Not necessarily. That's not the main issue here. The game being free and characters costing money to unlock isn't inherently bad. As I already mentioned, a lot of games are pushing DLC, some more than they should, and yeah, that's not inherently bad. So why is the trend bad? Well, the trend is bad not necessarily because you can pay to unlock characters. The trend is bad because of the way the free to play model is structured. You have a situation where pretty much anyone can start the game and pay the money to start the game. But what happens after that is to unlock content, you require people to pay cash. And I will jump in here and say, you could say, well, actually, if you play for 200 hours, you can unlock all the characters for free. But that is not the fastest way to unlock the characters. If you're working a minimum wage job, it's literally faster to work overtime than to play the game to unlock the characters. So, just putting that out there. But regardless, I also don't think for a game that is clearly meant to be played competitive, by its developers, that having a 200-hour barrier to unlock a full competitive roster is a good way to go about it. And once again, I won't get into the but if you want, you can truly pay to be competitive or whatever. I'm just talking about the model here and its effect on fighting games. So, why is the currency a problem? What's so different between paying for this Gleamium currency compared to just buying the new Street Fighter character for $5.99? I mean, this isn't the model that Multiversus invented. This is a tried and true free to play model, and I'll just list some of the basic issues that come with it. First of all, leftover cash. Okay, as you may have noticed, I mentioned that you can buy the smallest amount of cash you can buy is 450 Gleamium, but characters cost 700. So if you want to buy a single character, you can't actually buy the character for $6.5 to $8. You need to pay more. You need to buy 900 Gleamium, which is 2 packs of 450, so you can afford the 700 purchase. That means you have a leftover 200 Gleamium. So if you can't do anything with your leftover currency, then it's like you overpaid for your product. Well, the only way to do something with it is to pay for more. So inherently, this system makes you pay more. And it's a predatory practice that a lot of these freemium games use. And it's a well-known practice where the bundling of gems, of jewels, of whatever you're paying in each game does not properly fit what you are buying to incentivize you to either overpay or buy more. So the second issue is it's worse at comparing prices, at comparing prices. So for example, hypothetically, I'll come up with some random amounts here. So yeah, we mentioned a character in Multiversus costs 700 Gleamium. Well, what if I'm playing another fighting game? Okay, let's just say I'm playing the new JoJo's fighting game that's coming out, and they are hypothetically selling characters for JoJo stars in that game. Okay. And while a character costs 700 Gleamium in Multiversus, a character costs 50 JoJo stars in the JoJo fighting game. Well, as a customer, it's kind of difficult to assess what that means, right? You need to go out of your way and calculate, 50 sounds less than 700, but how much do the JoJo stars cost? Well, what if the 50 JoJo stars actually cost $10? Suddenly you're like, oh wait, Multiversus is actually a cheaper game, right? But it's harder for a customer to sit down and compare the prices and see what you're getting for the money you're spending if all the different prices are coded in fake currency, right? So this costs 700 Gleamium, a character cosmetic might cost 500, another character cosmetic might cost 1,150, right? And there's all these numbers all over the place, and if you actually want to sit down and calculate and go out of your way to calculate it, well then, they're gonna tell you, okay, go ahead and do it, but the average consumer isn't really going to have the effort to sit and do that. It's just another way to disguise perhaps slightly more expensive prices or slightly more expensive price increases without genuinely, making the consumer aware. A fantastic example of this is League of Legends, where not only has the average skin price gone up in their currency from 975 of their currency to 1,350 currency, so that's already a price increase of about 30%. And you actually now get less currency per purchase. So they recently reduced how much of their Riot currency you get in League of Legends for the same amount of money. So it's two ways in which they make the game more expensive, but the number on your screen does not seem significantly different. It's just another way where the company can use this to extort more money from the customer. Another point, this is more highly contested, is that having paid characters come out incentivizes unbalanced content. And we'll get into some comparisons as why this is not the case everywhere. But once again, with League of Legends, when a character is getting a skin, they might delay the nerfs. Hearthstone wants to sell new card packs. New cards are usually more powerful than old cards. There's power creep because they need to sell card packs. Similarly, if a new fighting game character comes out, right, and the main way for a player to obtain this character is by paying money, because as we mentioned, you need to grind for the in-game currency. So if you want that character on release, you have to pay money. There is a financial incentive in the balancing of the character to be stronger than they should be on release, which is not healthy. For the game. So I think those are like some basic points. And the first thing I want to touch on is that last one, about the balance. You might say, well, what about a game like Brawlhalla? Wouldn't a game like Brawlhalla, or even a game like Street Fighter, where they all have like season passes, have the same incentive? Why are you specifically calling out the Multiversus plan? And here's the thing. They don't. Brawlhalla features an option where for $20, or at least it used to be $20, it might be $50, now it might be $25, you get the entire roster of characters for free, and any new character that comes out for free. That means you've already given your $20. There is less of a financial incentive in the balance of the new character. In a game like Street Fighter, and in many old school fighting games, season passes are a big selling point of the game. It is very rare that players will buy like hardcore fans of a franchise, who in fighting games are the main target audience, will buy like only one DLC character. Usually, they will either buy a bundle with a season pass that comes originally with the game, or just buy the season pass itself. And the majority of the revenue in fighting games comes from the season pass. So since players have already spent that money, there is less of an issue with appealing to that ideology. Now, that said, I'm not saying games like Street Fighter or Brawlhalla are perfect. In any game where a new character costs money, there's a financial incentive in the company to have the character be stronger. And that's already an issue with the current existing DLC format fighting games have, but that issue is pushed further with the new pricing system that Multiversus is bringing to the table for fighting games. And speaking of, let's talk about free-to-play, because Brawlhalla is already free-to-play actually, and some might ask, why haven't I made a discussion on Brawlhalla, right? So, why can be free-to-play useful? I'm actually a big supporter of free-to-play, and I want to bring this up since I'm doing a whole discussion on it. And yeah, why is free-to-play good? Well, I think free-to-play, in a game like League of Legends or Fortnite, is actually critical for the game to survive. And here's why. In a Fortnite game, you need to get 100 players in every lobby. That is not an easy task, for example, a game that would be paid. Same thing in League of Legends. In League of Legends, you need to get 10 players per lobby, which is just for people to be able to play the game, right? Which is not an easy task. So if anyone wants to play the game in a reasonable amount of time, there needs to be a large enough player base to support game creation, because it is impossible to play the game by yourself. That's why in a game like Overwatch, we see long queue timers for unwanted positions. Overwatch is a paid game. It's not a game you can just play for free. Overwatch 2 will be. But as of this moment, as of making this video, Overwatch 1 is still the main focus. It's a paid game. You need to pay to play Overwatch. And that's why, if you compare Overwatch queue times to League queue times to Fortnite queue times, Overwatch suffers greatly. 8-minute queue times are not random occurrence. They are pretty common for popular positions. For League of Legends, even for popular positions, 3 to 4 minute queue times are considered long in the average player elo. So, free to play can definitely be useful for setting up game lobbies. It can also be useful for introducing friends to a game, introducing friends to a genre. Right? Once again, something like League of Legends, MOBAs, especially when they came out, were not a popular genre. League is kind of what blew them up, as well as Dota. So the game being free allows new players to go in. Same thing with Fortnite. Fortnite Save the World was actually a paid game, but the Battle Royale was free, and a lot of people got introduced to the genre from Battle Royale Fortnite. So, how does this apply to fighting games? Well, in fighting games, there's a few things. First of all, you don't need other players to play. Fighting games originated in arcades, where you could do 1 or 2 players. 1 player, the classic fighting game arcade mode, series of fights, needs zero interaction with other people. And the classic 1v1, which is the main focus of fighting games nowadays, and what fighting games have become, simply requires you to have one more person. So, how does the free-to-play model really apply to fighting games, right? Is it a necessity? In my opinion, it is not. Does it provide a benefit? Well, the one benefit you could think of is accessibility, introducing your friends to the game. So, as I mentioned, that's very useful for games like League or Fortnite. Is it that useful for fighting games? And I say, is it that useful? Because is it worth the sacrifices we have already mentioned? The anti-consumer sacrifices I already discussed. So, in order to justify those anti-consumer franchises, there needs to be something else to gain from this free-to-play model. And in this case, is fighting game accessibility supportive enough with a free-to-play model? Well, the way fighting games work is if one player owns the fighting game, literally any of their friends can already play it with them. All the major fighting games currently on Steam feature remote play, meaning that if a single player owns the game, all their friends can try it out with them. So if you want to introduce your friends to your fighting game, it doesn't really need to be free to play. There's already methods to introduce your friends to a paid fighting game as long as you own it with remote play on Steam. So okay, well, what about a new player wanting to try out a fighting game, right? Is it a good option for them? And the answer is yes. It is a great option. I truly believe that free to play is fantastic for accessibility for new players who want to get into the genre. Except new players who want to get into the genre usually don't stick with fighting games. Fighting games offer a very niche type of gameplay for people who want to specifically focus on mastery of a game. And while there are a lot of casual players, I also consider myself a casual player in a lot of fighting games. At the end of the day, as a longtime fighting game fan, the sacrifice of destroying how fighting games are priced and how accessible they are financially for fans of fighting games is not worth sacrificing this type of financial accessibility for longtime players to give new players who will likely drop the game a chance to play the game. And what I mean by that, what I mean by financial accessibility, is that for fans of a fighting game, for example Street Fighter, when the new Street Fighter comes out, you know you can pay down your cash and you'll get a game with a complete roster and perhaps pay a bit more for the season pass. But you know that that's it. Those are the characters, those are the prices. There's an upper limit to the content. And once you hit that upper limit, you'll have a complete game. In a game that has a free-to-play model, because the game is inherently free, there is an incentive to just basically have no upper limit. With a $100 pre-order, and this is where I'll get to the pre-orders and the base versions of the game, not even guaranteeing an entire roster if the roster reaches 30 characters. You are basically asking, and tons of cosmetics, limited time battle passes. I won't get into the limited time items, but basically you're just asking someone to spend so much money on your game. So if you are a long time fighting game player and you know you're going to stick with the game and you want a complete game with complete content, it ends up being far more expensive to play a free-to-play game. Because free-to-play means that the cosmetics, the characters, will come at an additional price to supplement for those people who will not pay. And what that means right now is that if someone wants a complete Multiversus collection, they will have to start spending, right now, 100, maybe 200, and in the future, more hundreds of dollars. Just like a complete collection in League of Legends costs thousands of dollars. Just like a complete Hearthstone collection also costs thousands of dollars. And it's just really bad. I'm not gonna lie. The new JoJo's game is coming out, and I will compare it to this because it's coming out tomorrow, and it had a $60 pre-order for the full game and an $80 pre-order for the full game and the season pass. It outlined exactly what you're getting in the extra pre-order, which is 4 characters and a few cosmetics, and that's that. No microtransactions, no paying extra money, no in the future situation of like, oh, I don't know how much I'm going to need to continue paying in the future to get the game. And you may say, well, it's one game. This is the model Multiversus uses. It's a fantastic game, so it's worth the money. But the issue isn't with one game. The issue is that Warner Brothers is a big company, and Multiversus is a big project. And the example that Multiversus sets will change fighting games forever. Riot has already announced that their fighting game will be free to play, and it will basically have a very similar model to Multiversus, effectively. That's what that means. So, having one fighting game be that expensive can be affordable for some people. That said, not everyone. But imagine having multiple of your favorite games beginning to follow that model. Multiple of your favorite games locking the majority of their content behind large paywalls that are insurmountable, effectively. That is the issue with the Multiversus free-to-play. It's the fact that it sets a trend that's clearly profitable for companies, and people are disregarding what this means for their favorite genre, and are shilling in the money. They are shilling in their time, and they are basically, with their playtime and with their wallets, saying, this is something that, as fighting game players, we accept. And to me, that's not something I can get behind. And it's not something I can, really support in any way. It pains me to see people actively support this type of game. And you might ask, well, what about Brawlhalla? I think Brawlhalla has a very, very good roundabout way of it with their $20 pass. I also think a game like Brawlhalla is much more in need of the free-to-play aspect, since it's not really based on any franchise, even though they are starting to have some great collabs. But it's a very difficult situation, because on one hand, Multiversus sounds like it's an amazing game, and on the other, it's setting this idea that this model that has been created and has been applied in MOBAs and card games, that companies can just throw this into our favorite fighting games and get away with it and create a culture where the original idea of a fighting game arcade, where you can go, you can play by yourself, you can play with your friend, and just have access to a list of unique and cool characters, is now locked behind a paywall or enough playtime that would take much more time than working for the money to pay for it. So, it's an interesting topic. As I mentioned, I don't believe it's all negative. I do think there is some value to having new players being able to try out the game. But at the end of the day, I think free-to-play will harm fighting games more than other mediums. Because other mediums like Battle Royale and MOBAs build their popularity and build their accessibility upon this type of model. But fighting games didn't. And it just seems like a new way to monetize a type of game that doesn't need this. And a type of game that has functioned successfully for over 25 years, nearly 30 years, without this type of monetization. And the type of game where it's this type of monetization harms the consumer and basically hurts long-time players the most, because the long-time players are the ones who won't be able to have their full collection of a game, because they'll be the ones who have to pay more compared to what they used to have to pay. And it's honestly very depressing. I think for me the saddest part is that no one, there were a few Twitter posts about it, right? But no one really actually sat down and said, hey, I'm not gonna play this game, or I'm not gonna spend my money because I care about what fighting games mean to me, and I care about the the ideas being put forward and the principles being put forward by such a monetization for a fighting game. And with Riot announcing their game to be also free to play, and the Riot fighting game will bring in a lot of people outside the fighting game community and outside casual fighting game fans. Um, it's I think it's very depressing that both hardcore and casual longtime fighting game fans basically will just have to shill more money if they want to have what they already had with previous games. Um, and I think all of this comes down to the fact that Multiversus pushed out this scheme and this monetization model, and no one has really acted upon it. It's definitely too late. The play numbers are there, right? That's why I'm making this video, and I sound kind of sad about it because no one really said or did anything, right? Everyone just flopped to Steam. The numbers went up great. Iconic characters also brought in a lot of people, and I can't imagine a company executive looking at that model and comparing it to a classic fighting game model, and saying, "Wow, let's do the classic model instead." DLC was already getting predatory in fighting games. Cosmetics being sold for money was already pretty bad. Characters going from like $2 to $3, going all the way up to $7 to $8 had become the standard for some games. Was getting pretty bad, and now we have freemium, and it's just so unfortunate because the standard that has been set, I think, cannot be turned at this point. I don't actually think a majority of players will boycott or anything. So it's just sad to see a good model of gaming succumb once again to the battle pass, premium skins currency type of monetization. Very unfortunate. Anyway, I guess I'm rambling at this point, but yeah, let me know what you think. There's definitely arguments that can be made against what I said, but I think for me, it's kind of sad to think about like what the future of fighting games has. And with Judges releasing tomorrow, I'm at least very happy that that game is coming out as a full package, and I can at least enjoy that game for now and the rest of time without having to worry about servers closing down or my digital currency disappearing or just wasting hundreds of dollars for a complete game. Anyway, thank you for listening to me, y'all.